Well, while the debate over Indigenous recognition drags on in Canberra, corporate Australia is getting on with its own effort. More than 1,100 companies and organisations across Australia are already rolling out reconciliation action plans. For former AFL footballer Adam Goodes, it's a chance to get involved in concrete improvement in the lives of First Nations people. I spoke with him earlier today. Adam Goodes, thanks for your time. Look, like it or not, work is a big part of our lives, so it must be really important to get workplaces involved in reconciliation.
Yeah, it is. I think, when Reconciliation Australia started their RAP program, I don't think they could ever imagine being where we are today, where we have over 1,100 corporates in pretty much covering every sector of business, community, buying into the Reconciliation Action Plan movement. And it's been a great day here helping one of our clients celebrate their second RAP.
Yeah, and I'll get to those stages in a moment, but it does strike me that when you look at the organisations, there are councils, big banks, law firms, cleaning companies, and we're here at a Japanese multinational where it's happening as well.
Yeah, it is, and I think for us, for me as an Indigenous business owner, it's about how can a Japanese, now Australian company, Fujitsu, who wants to give back to where it's doing business. And for me, it's around how are they going to help build capability in the technology space? How are they going to be able to help Indigenous businesses engage with some of the work that they're doing, especially around some of their government contracts? And that's where the partnerships and the relationships is really key, and that's where my business, Indigenous Defence and Infrastructure Consortium, has been working with Fujitsu for the last 18 months, exactly on the partnerships and the relationships that we have.
Can you talk us through specifically then what they're seeking to do in this phase of reconciliation? I think today was Innovate for Fujitsu.
Yeah, Innovate is very much something around, the Reflect RAP is what you do at the very beginning of your journey based on where you are in the reconciliation movement.
So you're thinking about things broadly.
And that's about capturing, well, what are we doing?
Right.
What can we do? And now it's about actually having a plan on how we're going to achieve those KPIs. How are we going to achieve, pipeline spend with Indigenous business over $1 million in the next 12 months? How are we going to engage with Indigenous people in the community? And also, how are we going to incubate Indigenous businesses? And that to me is really powerful because it's giving back. But one thing that I think is going to really change the landscape and what the RAPs are doing is through the amount of corporates that are getting involved, but the employees of those corporates being able to have cultural awareness training, have Indigenous experience, having connection with a culture which is very unique to us here in Australia, an Indigenous culture that they mightn't have learned about at school. They mightn't have heard any of the Dreamtime stories or any of the stories around colonisation. So there's an opportunity to really help educate our fellow Australians around Indigenous people and culture.
Is there much of an issue with that? A lot of people through school have had very little education about history. Do any people sort of say, oh, this feels like politics, you're going all PC? Are there issues there, and how do you work past them?
I wouldn't have thought there are. I think if you're going to work for an organisation, they're going to have drug and alcohol policy, they're going to have respect for women policy, they're going to have diversity inclusion policy. So this is another document that is from the top down to help Indigenous people, Indigenous culture, in a way infiltrate big corporates through reconciliation movement. And that's really important to me. And of those 1,100 companies that have their RAPs at the moment, that's over 2.3 million employees of those companies that is having an Indigenous experience at NAIDOC Week, Reconciliation Australia Week, through other events that they're tapping into local Indigenous communities where they're operating their business. Now, is that PC? I think that's just a learning outcome and an opportunity for that organisation and this opportunity for Fujitsu to help educate their employees around Aboriginal people and Aboriginal culture.
Is there an element of being generational to it? Because it strikes me, even going through school myself, there was a lot of French and Russian Revolution, we learned about world wars, very little on Indigenous Australian history, and that wasn't so long ago. Are you finding it's a bit of a generational gap thing?
I don't know if it's a generational gap, but I think what we can control is what's right in front of us, and we've got an opportunity for a partnership, with Fujitsu, one of our clients, to help them go on a journey around how can we best support Indigenous people in the industry that we're in. And for me, it's about growing that capability in that technology space. And we've been part of 2 bids now as partners with Fujitsu on contracts with the Department of Defence and the Department of Environment and Energies, which we've both won on those tenders. And that's giving us an opportunity to help grow and incubate Indigenous businesses through these contracts. And that's the real opportunity. And on the flip side, the real opportunity for the staff members or anyone that comes to Fujitsu, or even still an Indigenous person who's thinking about putting in an application to work at Fujitsu, see they have a wrap, know that they have commitments around Indigenous people and culture, and think, you know what, this is actually an organisation I want to work for because I know it's going to be a safe environment and I know they're going to give me good opportunities to work there.
And the companies as well, you mentioned Indigenous companies. How important is that story of inspiration? I mean, I'm assuming a lot of people, First Nations people, come up to you and see you as an inspiration on the football field. A lot of us, and I can say that because I wish I was playing footy, I needed a plan B pretty quickly. How important is that plan B as a real inspiration for a lot of First Nations people? Yeah,
look, I want plan A to be for every kid to go to school, get an education, because I tell you, my education, and I went to public school, and I think I've turned out all right, and it's my education that's helped me get to where I am today. It's my education that helped me when I was playing football to understand what the coaches wanted me to do. So for me, I want our Indigenous brothers and sisters, their plan A to be to go to school, to get an education, because anyone can own their own business, anyone can be an entrepreneur. Not everyone can be a professional athlete, not everyone can be a reporter on TV. There's certain pathways that we all can go on, but we all can go to school, get an education, and if we want, own and run our own businesses, and that's the game changer for me. One thing that Indigenous people haven't been able to do is build wealth, that net wealth in their family, and for me, Indigenous people in the business sector are doing that now. And with wealth comes choices. And the 3 choices that I really are seeing for Indigenous people and businesses is the choice of where to live, owning your own home, important. Secondly, where you're sending your kids. Is it private, is it public, wherever you want to put your kids. And thirdly, what sort of health insurance can I buy and provide for my family? There are 3 key indicators through wealth alone and building wealth that can change your life, not only for one generation, but for many more.
Yeah, it's generational lack of opportunity. It goes the other way, generational opportunity. We like to think of ourselves as an egalitarian society. You have a go, you get a go, is the Prime Minister's motto, but it's a bit more complex than that.
It is, and the clients that we have and that we're working with, like Fujitsu, see that commitment and see the opportunity through business, doing normal business, day-to-day business. This wrap isn't about changing the whole business model. There's still going to be Fujitsu, Japanese owned, doing what they do best. It's about how can we incorporate Indigenous people and business on this journey with us and the way we go about it.
Just turning to what's happening in Parliament at the moment broadly, obviously Indigenous recognition is still a pretty slow path, but the voice to Parliament, according to the coalition plan, won't be enshrined in the Constitution. Is that something you think could still get widespread support from Indigenous communities, given it was what was called for in the Uluru Statement?
Yeah, look, I wasn't there, but for me, what we're seeing today is the way I see most Indigenous people can benefit from business, and that is, businesses having their reconciliation action plan, understanding that if a business has a reconciliation action plan, they have KPIs to engage with Indigenous people and Indigenous business. I'm happy for all the other people to do the talking around that issue. What I'm doing now post-football is about engaging Indigenous people with big corporates, and corporates like Fujitsu have made a commitment, like they have today, for the next 3 years on how they're going to work with Indigenous people, but more importantly, how they're going to help their staff engage with Indigenous people and culture.